Hello, and welcome to our webinar, Meet the Artists, an award-winning Illustrator webinar. I'm Sarah Hunter, Books for Youth and Graphic Novels Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Today's slide presentation was included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download it, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the slides by typing the URL in this screen onto your web browser. If you have any trouble, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select Show or Hide Subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Ekua Holmes, illustrator of Black Girl, You Are Atlas, written by Renee Watson, Juana Medina, illustrator of Maleta Full of Treasures by Natalia Sylvester, April Harrison, illustrator of Go Forth and Tell, The Life of Augusta Baker, Librarian and Master Storyteller by Brianna J. McDaniel. And we were originally planning to speak with Jessica Love, who unfortunately is unable to join us today, but we are happy to report that we will be joined by the co-authors of Gaga Mistake Day, Emma and Susan Straub, who will discuss the book and Jessica's illustrations. First, we'll kick things off with Ekua Holmes. Ekua is a collage and mixed media artist who investigates family histories, relationship dynamics, childhood impressions, and the power of hope, faith, and self-determination in her work. She creates and leads workshops, has been a visiting artist and lecturer, and held artist residencies throughout New England. For her work in illustrating children's literature, Holmes is the recipient of a Caldecott Honor, Coretta Scott King's John Steptoe New Talent Illustrator Award, Robert Seibert and Hornbook Awards, and back-to-back Coretta Scott King Awards for illustration. She is also currently Associate Director at the Center for Art and Community Partnerships at Mass Art and a founder lead artist of the Roxbury Sunflower Project. Thanks so much for being here today, Ekua.
Hello, how are you? Thank you everyone who's here today. I'm excited to be here and learn about these other phenomenal authors and illustrators. I'm Ekua Holmes, and I'm reaching out to you from Roxbury, Massachusetts. I always like to say that Roxbury is my country, and it is the spiritual home of African Americans in Boston. I came of age in the 70s, and I was super inspired by the Black muralists like Dana Chandler and Gary Rickson, who are emblazoning the sides of buildings with messages from the people, from the streets. And I also was a big reader. And I love to look at the different styles of illustration. Of course, back then we didn't have many full color books, but many things in pencil and watercolor washes and things like that. So at some point in my life, I thought maybe I could be a children's book illustrator. But I'm happy to be with you today to talk a little bit about the book, Black Girl, You Are Atlas, which is maybe we can go to the next slide. There we go. Black Girl, You Are Atlas, which is a volume of poems by the phenomenal Renee Watson. And my highest compliment is that I'm sending a copy to my 16-year-old granddaughter in hopes that she will enjoy finding herself in it and celebrating aspects of herself in it. Nikki Giovanni says, Renee Watson in these poems has beautifully embraced the joys of being a girl. This atlas holds our hearts up. Next slide, please. Actually, we can go to the next. Well, this is nice to note that there are 2-star reviews. I think there might be more now, but so far the book is being well received. And for those of you who are in libraries and schools, I hope that you will make this a part of your collection. So let's go to the next slide. I'm showing the cover art. This artwork for the book did not come as a result of me actually working as an illustrator and attempting to illustrate the poems. With only a few exceptions, the artwork was curated from my portfolio of art, so it was mostly existing art. Renee and I met when we were both receiving Coretta Scott King Awards in 2016. And after reading her book, Pieces of Me, I knew that I would welcome the opportunity to work with her. And this was the first opportunity that came along. So as existing art, rather than traditional illustrations, we were really looking on a spiritual level to sort of listen to what the poems were saying, look at what the art was saying, and find ways that they complemented and enhanced one another. Um, the cover image is a collage of painted and found papers. And I work primarily as a collage artist, and I use anything on paper, sometimes fabric and sometimes objects. But for the most part, it's found or created paper. So that means everything from magazine pages, newspaper pages, tickets and stamps and wrapping paper and those kinds of things. It's kind of a little pile of it over to the right there. I also use stencils to color and texture the paper, use letter stencils and overlap and overlap and overlap to create patterns. But next slide, please. So Black Girls, which is the subject of this book, Black Girl, you are Atlas. You are holding up the world. Well, in my own work, I had already started on a series of celebrating girlhood. Particularly, we could start with myself. I was a Black girl growing up in Roxbury, and there were wonderful images and things that I wanted to share with the world. Next slide, please. I was a reader, as I said, and I also love to kind of honor the people that helped me grow up. So this particular piece, which is actually not in the book, is called Girl Literature, but I just wanted to give you a sense of the type of work that I had been doing around girls. It's in honor of my Aunt Barbara, who was a librarian, a very rare thing in 1960, Boston, Massachusetts, who took myself and my two cousins to the library every week to take out books. And this is where I became so enamored of illustration. In growing up in my day, you know, there were no joysticks and things like that. We made up games, we made up characters, and we were cared for by the adults around us who wanted us to aspire for great things and sought out opportunities for us. The library was certainly one of those big opportunities. Next slide, please. In Renee's first poem in the book, it's called Where I'm From, and it lists several things that bind she and I together. Even though our girlhoods were 2 decades apart in our geography, fully East Coast and fully West Coast, there are many things that we have in common. She talks about double Dutch, gospel and soul music, ladies on front porches keeping an eye on the neighborhood, playing with airplanes overhead, and being on the coast with access to oceans. This piece is in the book, and it's called City Circles. And I just remember always being able to see the skyline from Roxbury, which is an elevated community in Boston. You could always see downtown as it was growing over the years, but it found its place in Renee's book. Next slide, please. This next girl is an image that I call Golden. And it's not in the book, but I, again, wanted to just share some of the work I had been doing around girls. And this is a very, very special girl, as she became the symbol for a solo show at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And that by itself is special, but what had happened was a breakdown or maybe a revelation of how the institution was not welcoming to children of color. And as a part of the healing of that rift, this girl became the symbol for someone who is leading us all into the museum and acknowledging, helping us to acknowledge that all spaces, that we belong everywhere. There's no place that Black girls don't belong or that there's no experience they can't grow into. Next slide, please. This is just a celebration of the different ways that we wear our hair. I think it's called Innocence, and she is studying this butterfly. It's kind of takes off from where Dream Street leaves off with Belle and the butterflies. Next slide, please. So another thing that I love to do in my work is include my family. So this is my Aunt Mary, portrait of her, and she's included in the book as one of the haikus that Renee puts in, which I love haikus because they're so brief and such compacted wisdom. Next slide, please. This is another portrait of Aunt Mary. Next slide, please. This is Nana's Blue Garden, part of a series on gardening and the impact of nature on our lives. Next slide, please. This is Daddy's Girls. Next slide, please. And this is All Fly Home, a celebration of children at play and a reminder to always wear your crown. Always remember that you are royalty. Next slide, please. I really enjoyed that this image was included. It's the only image in the book that celebrates a male character. And it's an ode to Renee's brother, who she says is the first man who ever loved her, told her she was beautiful, and wrote her letters. And it's also one of my favorite pieces. It's called The Summer of '62 and celebrates sort of the boundaries that we had in the neighborhood, the safety boundaries where you understood different neighborhoods and what streets not to cross. And it's also just a celebration of coming of age. Next slide, please. This is Cancer Rising, Aquarius Moon. And Renee has paired this with a haiku as well about sisterhood, which a large part of her book is about her relationship with her older sister, who cared for her in very magical ways. Next slide, please. This is called Menemsha. This is a part of the book, and Renee's poem that's paired with it reminds us that we all need a place to recharge, revision, and renew. And she speaks for the first time for me of these places as altars. And I had never thought of a place in nature as an altar, but now I can only think of it that way, as places in nature, as a place for sacrifice, worship, and prayer. Next slide, please. This is the inkwell, all kinds of bodies being renewed in the ocean. And she has a poem called Black Girl Body, Be So Many Things. And it's a reflection on our somatic selves. Next slide, please. I also very much love this. I wanted to read this. I don't know if I have time for it, but the name of the poem is called Scalp. And this was a piece that was done for the book. It says, plowing through naps like cotton fields, each pathway a map to the Underground Railroad. Black cotton gathered, pulled, every handful a testimony. Bundle this majesty, parted, twisted, braided, sculpted into a crown. Holy. I love that. Next slide, please. And getting toward our end, this is Rain or Shine, a perfect pairing with Renee's poem, What I Know About Rain. For me, this image speaks to the fact that all growing things need rain. Sometimes that means stormy weather, gray skies, and cooler breezes, but out of that comes growth and a bounty of beauty. Sunshine and rain, we need both. Renee's poem, in its way, speaks to the same wisdom. Next slide, please. This is Unbound, just a Black girl breaking free from the bounds of gravity and jumping for joy, Black joy, which you hear so much about today. This is a celebration of that. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, Renee has written in many poetic styles, haikus and tankas and different things that I know nothing about. And the artwork also reflects many styles, from silhouetted forms to representational forms, singular portraits to groups, colorful to monochromatic. The two collections, her poetry and my visual stories, overlapped in many places and made this special volume possible. This is a coming of age book. And to my granddaughter, I would say, let this book be a friend. Carry it with you. Look for and find yourself in it. Let it inspire, console, remind, and awaken you to yourself. Let it encourage you, lastly, to write your own poems and create your own visual worlds. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekua. That was beautiful. And now we'll be joined by Juana Medina. Juana is the creator of the Pure Belfry Award-winning chapter book, Juana and Lucas, and many other titles, and has illustrated numerous picture books, including 'Twas the Night Before Pride and Smick. Born and raised in Bogota, Colombia, Juana Medina now lives with her family in the Washington, D.C. area. Take it away, Juana.
Thank you, Sarah, for that lovely introduction. Hola, it's so good to be here with all of you. Let's go to the next slide. My name is Juana Medina, and let's go to the next slide. And today I'm very excited to be sharing with you A Maleta Full of Treasures, written by Natalia Sylvester. This is her first picture book, I'm sure first of many. It has been wonderful to be working on this book. Let's go to the next slide. As soon as I saw the manuscript and it was about treasures, how exciting could that be? And also about abuelas, grandmothers, and being someone who grew up very, very close to her grandparents. This was very enticing to me. Let's go to the next one. And through the illustrations, I wanted to make sure that I would honor that link between grandmother and granddaughter. And it was all about very, very subtle moments, even if with those two little dots from the eyes, I could symbolize all the love that goes from one generation to another. Moreover, and let's go to the next slide, and the next one. It was a book that invited me to revisit a place in the world that I love deeply, Latin America, where I grew up. Let's go to the next one. And that talked about immigration, something that has formed very deeply my identity as I became an immigrant to the US in my early 20s. And I could speak of this journey from my perspective and through the over 2 decades that have followed, in which I have learned and have been humbled by so many stories of fellow citizens of this world who have had to leave their homes and start anew in a new place. Let's go to the next one. It was also an extraordinary opportunity to talk about family and the links that exist between generations. Let's go to the next slide. And identity, and how we live within our skins and what we represent, and what we carry from our ancestors, even when we leave our homes and start our lives anew in a new place. Let's go to the next slide. Ultimately, it's a book about connection and how we connect with others and how we make this hemming of our lives and our feelings come together and be expressed from one to another. Let's go to the next slide. So when I was asked by Nancy if I would be interested in drawing the pictures for this book, it was very easy to answer this question with a resounding yes. I was very excited by the opportunities that it presented, particularly, and let's go to the next slide, because throughout the last decade, I've had the opportunity to visit so many different young readers who are yearning more than anything to find ways in which let's go to the next slide, in ways in which they belong. We all try to find as best as we can ways in which we belong to ourselves, belong to our communities, to our families, to our loved ones, and so on. So the idea of working in a book that was in such a sweet way, no pun intended, trying to discover and bring up those boundaries of belonging with a loud yet gentle voice was very important to me. So I was very thankful for this opportunity. It also allowed for me, being Colombian, to learn about my neighboring country, Peru, with which we have a lot in common. But as I learned throughout the process of illustrating this book, there were very many small nuances and differences that I was truly fascinated to learn about. And so there were many opportunities, be it through the recipes, for example. Let's go to the next slide. And the way that we organize things within a home, and looking at Peruvian architecture and looking at Peruvian homes and looking at pottery and trying to see ways and find ways in which, no matter how small the details, I could honor Latin American and particularly Peruvian culture, be it through having condors and different fruits and different vegetables within the receptacles in the kitchen, or the recipes found throughout. So let's go to the next slide. And so, for example, at one point, this abuela in particular is creating all sorts of recipes that she wants to bring from Peru to her granddaughter. And I wanted to make sure that even the recipes, even if we're reading them upside down, we could see details of recipes that are important to Peruvian families, and that I could find ways in which they could find themselves identified. Because I thought if I, as Colombian, would want to find very particular ideas, it would reciprocate with my neighbors, with my vecinos peruanos. And so in this case, it was the Peruvian turrón de Doña Pepa, which the abuela is creating. And so I wanted to make sure that I got as many details as possible within her recipe. Let's go to the next one, please. Also looking at all the candy and sweets and the explosion of color all throughout. In some cases, I found out that perhaps Natalia and I shared a number of different candies in our childhood, but that also there were things I'd never tried before. Let's go to the next slide. Also, something I enjoyed deeply was learning more about the biodiversity of Peru, and learning, for example, about the gallitos de las rocas, and more about llamas and macaws and so on. Let's go to the next one. And also learning so much about flora and so many different plants. And we have many orchids in common, but then there are also plants that we do not have in Colombia. So it was lovely to learn more about plants from Peru. Let's go to the next slide, please. More biodiversity. And it was great to be able to use these elements and even in the tiniest ways represent them in very small details throughout the books. Let's go to the next slide, please. So that children can find, even in teeny tiny details within a page, their habas or their gallito de las rocas or tucanes or armadillos or whatever animals that they get a little piece of home back, and a sense of belonging within the pages of Maleta Full of Treasures. Let's go to the next one. And then there were also opportunities to showcase Miami, a wonderful, vibrant city with incredible architecture where the story takes place. And so in this case, looking at different landmarks. Let's go to the next slide, please. And trying to also capture some of the buildings of Miami and try to bring some whimsical sense into the architecture. Let's move on, please. The next one. I also wanted to honor a very large population of Japanese immigrants that made Peru their home, and I have known how the Japanese influence in Peru is very, very strong. And in this case, I decided to be inspired by Hokusai, master of composition, and reinterpret different ways to bring his understanding of composition. Let's go to the next page. And even in the smallest ways, bring a little nod to aspects of the richness of Peru, even through bringing together different strands of our ancestry. Let's go to the next slide, please. And something that was very important to me was to honor Incas and Ashaninkas and Aymaras, originary cultures of Peru, through their textiles and their understanding of pattern. Please feel free to go through the next slide so that you can see some of the differences in patterns and color tinctures that they use in their textiles. And when within the story, there was a chance to bring in a blanket, I thought of the unique geography and almost the textures of the mountains. And I thought of Huayna Picchu, and I thought, well, maybe I can use the posture of the girl to show almost the outline of Huayna Picchu in Machu Picchu. for those that are familiar, to find little, even the smallest outlines, a sense of home if possible. Let's go to the next slide. After all, this is an effort to generate more empathy, more connection, and better understanding. Let's go to the next slide. And in the end, I hope that through this book, young ones and adults can equally find possibility and that sense of belonging that we all so long for. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juana. Our next presenters will be Emma Straub and Susan Straub. Emma is the New York Times bestselling author of the novels The Vacationers and This Time Tomorrow, among others, and the picture book Very Good Hats. She and her husband own Books Are Magic, 2 independent bookstores in Brooklyn, New York. Susan knows the power of picture books. Her Read to Me program focused on getting books into the lives of young families, provided insights and material for a co-authored Reading with Babies, Toddlers, and Twos. Susan lives in Brooklyn, wonderfully near her novelist daughter, Emma Straub, and her 2 grandchildren. Welcome, Emma and Susan.
Hello.
Hi, are we here? Are we see?
Can you see us? We can't.
We're so sorry Jessica can't be here, but are we here?
I think we're here.
Okay.
Yeah, we can't see ourselves for some reason, but we believe that you are seeing us. I think this is actually perfect though, that
Yes.
like we're already doing it wrong because obviously we are the wrong people to be here.
We missed Jessica.
Because Jessica
Where's Jessica?
is extremely is just so brilliant,
We're
and
lucky that she said yes.
we are so lucky. And so we're just going to muddle through with some words and see what happens. So let's go to the next slide and see. Okay. So that's the beautiful cover of Gaga Mistake Day. Maybe we should say where Gaga Mistake Day came from. You want to start? Do you want to?
Where did it come from?
Yeah.
Well, we were stuck during COVID, and I've been a grandmother now for 10 years. The oldest one is 10. And I have had a lot of fun. And I think being a grandmother has launched whatever playfulness, fun loving that I maybe didn't do with my own children, but suddenly I can have it with these kids. So that was part of it, the fun of being a goofy grandma, right?
I mean, okay, you were always fun. But I do think that there's something, like a layer of, not sneakiness or like duplicity, but I think there's a layer of like, rule breaking that comes along with being a grandparent, in part because you can just be like, ah ha ha, take it back. I don't need to have this child anymore. And so that's sort of where Gaga Mistake Day comes from too. Like the image, the phrase Gaga Mistake Day came from one evening when my mom was bathing and putting our children to bed, and there were so many bubbles in the bath.
I lost one child, actually. We were scooping handfuls.
Right. And so,
yes.
so we just call that Gaga Mistake Day, and we talk about it all the time. Okay, let's go to the next slide and see what's there.
One of the things that I was so stunning about having our text made into a picture book was, of course, the pictures. The pictures are astonishing. The text says something about Gaga brings fuzzy slippers, but look what Jessica has done with the fuzzy slippers. She's made them pink, which means you can't avoid seeing them. They're radiating, and she warms her ears with them, which is what the text sort of says, but look what Jessica did with it. It's just fabulous.
Yeah, I think one of the really fun things for us was seeing how Jessica, seeing Jessica's choices and the way that her choices do what I would argue illustrations do for every picture book, which is make them 4,000% better.
Yes, agreed.
Should we go to the next
Yes,
one?
let's go to the
Okay,
next
let's
one.
see what's there.
Uh, So they're going to the park, and there are always ways to make a child either slow down or speed up. Mostly you don't have to have them slow down. No. But I think grandparents can often point something out, which makes the walk to the park really fun. I think parents often have too much to do. They are too stressed very often. They can only fit in 20 minutes of park time, whereas a grandparent perhaps can really play on the way to the park as well as in the park. So this is stepping on cracks or not stepping on cracks or
Oh,
walking
and I love
backwards.
one thing that I love about this grandmother that we didn't communicate directly to Jessica, but I think she
No.
just understood, was that we needed the most stylish, cool grandmother in the world. Like, this outfit to me is like it's kind of like Audrey Hepburn or something. I don't know. It's so good. This Gaga's clothes are so good. Look at that snazzy umbrella. All right, let's go to the next one. Yeah.
Well, I do. Doesn't everybody feed ice cubes to their plants? Anyway, the child is quite excited by this and I do demand that the little boys help me feed ice cubes to the plants. I don't always sing to them, do I? No, I don't sing to them, but anyway. It's such a beautiful picture. Look,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a dream come true to have these images. Jessica,
Yeah.
I wish she was here too.
Well, do you want to talk a little? I mean, because I feel like some of these librarians, they might know me a little bit from Very Good Hats or even my adult books, maybe, who knows? But do you want to talk a little bit about your, like, how you came to picture books?
Oh, well, in a kind of a grown-up way, besides adoring reading to my children, and I hope maybe that there's another image of that.
Yeah.
But I ran this Read to Me program with librarians. I could not have done it. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Judy Zuckerman, Brooklyn Public Library. Shout out. That I felt that the way to help a family grow together and enjoyably was to share picture books where both parent and child, especially pre-verbal and pre-literate children, can get the power of language and see the imagery of great art. And the only place you get that is in children's picture books. So I had a wonderful run of 25 years with young families in and out of high schools, in and out of centers of various kinds. And I have the backing of my writers group, which includes, do I speak proper? I don't, which includes some wonderful, wonderful children's book illustrators of note. And they have been so encouraging. So I think this has been, I would like to make more books for more families to have more fun together. I think that's my ultimate goal in life, really. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Oh, next slide, let's see. Oh, do you want to say something about
Yeah.
that?
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
This
here we
is-
go.
Yeah.
Here's the bad granny.
Yeah. Oh, she doesn't feel bad at all. Look at that. Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the things that we talked about when we were talking about sort of our dream illustrations for this book, and also just like the kind of book that we wanted to make, was that it had to have a sense of humor.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think some of our favorite books collectively, I think I can say, are like James Marshall's books. I was reading some just yesterday, and they're just hilarious always. And one of the things that's hilarious about them is that it's not just that the text is funny, it's that you can see even on these just tiny little I mean, if you just look at the 4 sets of eyeballs on this page, you know, it tells you a complete story. Yeah, oh God, look at that deranged little child who has just eaten so many marshmallows. She's having the best time. All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, this is the best. This is the best.
This is the one that makes me cry. Look at the detail. Well, first of all, the child gives the grandmother her book to read at bedtime upside down. And of course, the grandmother complies. She reads every word of it. And you'll notice that the little child's goosey stuffed animal is always with her. So are the 2 pussycats. But look, not only is Ferdinand recognizable, even though it's upside down, for all of us who have adored that book always, but look at their holding hands or fingers.
Yeah.
Oh, Elmo. Oh, this is so gorgeous, so gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, I think that's the kind of thing to sort of bring it home to talking about the art, you know, that's the kind of thing. Like I don't think we said Ferdinand. We love
No,
Ferdinand.
no. How did she know?
I really tried to name one of my children Ferdinand, and nobody else thought it was a good idea. But
Did you really?
I really did. Don't you think River could be a
He
Ferdinand?
could be a Ferdinand, yes.
But I think that, you know, like that's something that we didn't say. And just like the holding of the fingers is just,
All those details.
it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it tells you everything you need to know about their relationship.
Yes. Yes.
don't-
Oh,
yeah.
look how beautiful. Oh, I could look at this forever.
Well, I think it's the last one.
Oh.
It's the last one.
They'll be glad.
I know. Oh, God.
Is that the end of our slides? We don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, it is.
Oh,
Okay. Well, thank you, librarians.
thank you, librarians. We love you. And thank you, our fellow artists.
Yes.
For putting up with us.
No, for the artists.
For the
not
artists.
Our fellow artists.
Oh, no.
Just the artists.
Thank you. We've learned
Yeah,
so much.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off our faces.
All right, honey. Thank
Okay.
you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Emma and Susan. Our final presentation will come from April Harrison. April is a Coretta Scott King, John Steptoe award-winning illustrator and renowned folk artist. Her work appears in the public collections of Vanderbilt University, Virginia Commonwealth University Medical Center, the Atlanta Housing Authority, and the Erskine University Museum, as well as in many private collections. Thanks for being here today, April. The floor is yours.
Hello, I am April Harrison. I am an illustrator and fine artist. I reside in Greenville, South Carolina. It's my home. And today I'm here to discuss Augusta Baker. But before we get to Augusta, I want to tell you kind of how I start my process. A lot of times people are curious about illustrators and like, how do you start? What do you look at? Do you take references? I always start everything with an abstract. And generally I do that with the fictional type books because I have full reign to do whatever I want to do. And I really like to start with a colored backdrop. I cannot stand just a white backdrop. So I always start with abstract. Next slide, please. And these are mostly my tools of the trade. I use acrylic paints. I use a lot of art pens and pencils. And just like my sister Holmes, I use a lot of collage papers. I collect a lot of found objects as well. She's like my sister spirit. So I was really happy to hear that. And I actually love her work as well. Next slide, please. This book is about Augusta Baker, and it's called Go Forth and Tell, the Life of Augusta Baker, Librarian and Master Storyteller. When I was first approached with this manuscript, it took me by storm because she believed and she advocated for a positive imagery of African-American children instead of different stereotypes that were out there. She sought after illustrators and authors to do positive imagery of children because all children want to see themselves in a positive light. especially when it gets around to that circle time. You want to be able to hold your head up high and be proud of who you are. And I loved Augusta Baker for that. And I believe, you know, if I'd have been there during that time as an illustrator, I would have been like, pick me, Augusta, I'll do it. Next slide, please. And this book is written by the amazing Juana McDaniel. And yesterday we actually had a book launch in the Decatur Library in Decatur, Georgia. Amazing. We had a wonderful time. It was just a great time, to be honest. Now, what I'm showing you here is the different forms of the book cover. This is one of them. You know, I tend to have this soft palette, and I'm trying to step it up a little bit, you know, trying to get a different types of palettes. But I did the red backdrop, but I don't think anyone quite appreciated it the way I did. Next slide, please. Okay, this is more true to the form. Actually, this is Augusta spreading her stories throughout the world, to every household, to every home. And she's doing that, like she's going forth actually to tell that story. And I really appreciated the fact that, I guess the fact that she created this throughout the world. You know, she was that woman. She went around the country to spread positive imagery of children, positive stories. And so that's why I wanted to do the manuscript. Next page. This was a thought. I was going to do the book cover as Augusta Baker. I was going to do a fine portrait, I guess you might say, of Augusta Baker. But we decided to do a little bit more playful Augusta Baker. But that's just one of the images I came up with. You go through a lot of different ones before you and the team decide which one to go forth with. Next, please. This is also one of the first pages. Brianna, in her written word, she said that before she became a storyteller, Augusta, she was a great story listener. And that took me for a little while because I was creating all this action, you know, like she has a book, she has imagery popping all over the place. She's interested in what's going on. But then I read the words again and it said she was a great story listener. And I said, wow, how do I create that? So next, please. Same thing here. I have the images popping around, you know, her grandmother, they had a great relationship. I have a great relationship with my grandmother, bless her soul, she's no longer with us. But Augusta had a great relationship with her grandmother, so I thought I'd show them together this way. But even here, in a sense, you can't really see how she's listening. Next page, please. Uh-oh, they're out of order a little bit. But there is another page where we capture Augusta listening. She's on her mother's lap. She's on her grandmother's lap, and she's literally listening to the story. And each page that follows thereafter also shows Augusta listening on her grandmother's lap. This particular page is the Painted World page. And this is one of the author's favorite pages, not this one in particular. This was one I created initially, but we decided to go with a different one because I didn't like the way Augusta's back was facing us. I wanted people to see her. I wanted them to see her painting the worlds. Next, please. Okay, they're all out of order here. Okay, this one is Augusta listening. And the three different pieces is how I started, what I thought about at the end. And in the middle is what I decided to lead with. So the middle one actually won out because I wanted to show her excited about the word. I wanted to show some words, and I just wanted to show certain imagery in the book. Now, most people don't understand this, but I don't know if anyone's ever read, or when you get the book, and that's why I'm not going to show you all the book. I want you to see some pages. I want you to be curious, get this book. But in this particular page, I always put little nuggets in my books, my illustrations. Most people don't know about them. It's usually something special to me. And in this particular page, the page she's looking at, that's a piece of my work in there. It's a poem that I wrote many, many years ago. I kind of snuck that in there. I do that at times. Next slide, please. And here we go with the same. This is the end. You can go to the next one. This is her listening. This is one of the slides where she's actually listening to her grandmother. And she listens wherever she goes. And I wanted to show her with inclined ears with a slight head nod, you know, where you can literally say she's actually listening. She's not talking, she's listening. Next slide, please. This is Augusta going to college. And when I mean the actual library, and here she's actually teaching children. And one thing about Augusta, she always lit a candle before she told a story. I don't know if you noticed that. She actually has a candle there. And every time she began her stories, she had a candle. She would light the candle. At the end of the story, she would have one of the children blow it out, or she would blow it out. If there was a birthday kid around, she would let the birthday child blow it out. I just thought that was so amazing. I just love that. And I can't help but to believe that her grandmother probably did that with her when she actually told her stories. Next page. Augusta had the privilege of teaching James Baldwin and Audre Lorde. Can you believe that? And look at who they are now. Well, you know, who they became. Amazing writers. You know, you never know when you're going to touch a child. You never, ever know. And she brought up these children, you know, and she created that safe space for them, that community that they could learn. And Audre said she saved her life, you know, by meeting Augusta and sharing in the stories and helping her to learn to read and enjoy reading. It's just amazing to me. And so I wanted to create the actual James Baldwin portrait as well as Audre Lorde. Next. This is the painted world picture. This is the one Arthur loves the most. So I'm gonna have to do something about that. But on the left, you'll see where I had ideas flowing. And on the right is the actual finished piece. And I actually used a paintbrush in this. I don't know if you noticed that, but I literally used one of my paintbrushes because I'm a collage freak. I love texture. Anywhere I can get it, I'm going to get it. And so I said, why not put an actual brush there? Next, please. And that's the piece, the actual final piece. And I wanted to create a world with stories. I wanted to create kids on top of the world, who she represented and who she wanted to pour love into and pour knowledge into. And you know, a lot of times we don't appreciate librarians like we should. My librarians taught me so much, and I was introduced to mysteries. I love mysteries as a child. Nancy Drew mysteries, later on Agatha Christie. You know, that's me. I love mysteries. But I love going to the library, checking out 20, 30 books at a time back in the day. Okay, but next, please. Now I'm talking, this is my fine art. This is not in the book, so don't get the book and look for it, all right? But this is how I started. When I was approached to do illustrations for my first book, What is Given from the Heart by Patricia McKissick. This is what the publishers saw. And they figured, well, hey, she can do things like this. Perhaps she can actually do a children's book. I jumped at the opportunity, and I'm so glad I did. And I'm so glad it was a Patricia book, Patricia McKissick, because she was my favorite author at the time when I used to read her books to my grandchildren. So it was an honor and a privilege. Next, please. And I mostly do children, if you notice. I do a lot of children. I do a lot of positive imagery of children, just like Augusta Baker longed for back in the day, you know. And because of her, we have that. You know, we have lists. Librarians can check her list and they can say, hey, during this time, you know, let's get these type books versus the other type books. You know, Augusta Baker had this thing about, I think it was a Little Black Sambo, and she hated that book. But even when she sent her new brochure out, the librarians, they had a brochure made of books that are positive imagery for children, Black children, African-American children. She still had to leave that particular book in the actual brochure. But that was something she was willing to do in order to create the greater good to show the actual great books that these kids had the opportunity to see and to read. Next, please. And these are some of the same paintings. I do a lot of mother love. I believe in community. I believe in children. So to be able to do children's illustrations is just beyond. It's golden to me, and I'm golden right now. But to be able to create positive imagery for children is all I ask for. I've always wanted to do it, and I'm so thankful that the Lord has blessed me to do it. Next, please. I think that might be it, right? Great, that's the end. But thank you for listening to me. I hope I didn't rattle too much. I do want you to understand that this book was written as a love letter to librarians. We know you have a tough job, and we're here to make that job a little bit easier. And we hope you enjoy the book, you get the book, you read the book to the children, and make us proud. And also, if you're ever in Columbia, every year they have the Augusta Baker Dozen Festival, where you see authors and storytellers, and it's a wonderful event. But I'm gonna say bye for now. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, April. That was a wonderful note to end on today. And a huge thank you to all of today's wonderful panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Staff training, in-services, local conference, Booklist can help. You can now request free copies of Booklist and Booklist Reader for upcoming staff training programs, so you can help the next generation of library workers become readers advisory and collection development superstars. Scan the QR code on the screen, visit our website, or email info@booklistonline.com for details. Mastering the art of reader's advisory involves ongoing study, both of major concepts that form the backbone of a good RA practice and of the skills that make your RA practice effective in the day-to-day. This series of Booklist workshops on Thursday, March 14th is designed to keep you up to speed on both the ideas and practice that will enhance your RA game. Visit the Booklist website to register now so you can learn from experts in the field about how genres relate to each other, how to talk to patrons about their leisure reading, and how to write an effective book annotation. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. A huge thank you to our special guests, Ekua, Juana, Emma, Susan, and April, and to our sponsor, Penguin Random Young Readers. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.